I'm delighted to call upon three teenagers. I'm looking for the third one, yes. Lev Bierman and Simone Kornbluth and Avery Prince, who are going to share some reflections about their experiences in Israel and in Poland over the summer.
Shana Tova. My name is Lev Bierman, and this past summer I went to Israel on a program called Gesher. This 3-week program is through my summer camp, Tel Yehuda. It was my 10th and last year being a camper at a Young Judea camp, and for me, this trip was a turning point in my life and in my Jewish education. For the past 10 summers, I've gone to summer camp with mostly the same people, and I've had generally similar experiences each time. But this summer was different. Instead of swimming in the lake at Camp Judea, I was swimming in the Dead Sea and snorkeling off the coast of Eilat. Instead of waiting in line to get food in the Chadar, I was waiting in line to buy chalati in the shuk. Instead of sneaking out of my cabin at 2 a.m., I was sitting with my friends in the courtyard at Kibbutz Keturah at 2 a.m., playing cards and listening to music, not on Shabbat, of course. Instead of hiking around the woods in Hendersonville, I was hiking at Masada at 3 in the morning. And instead of watching Israeli scouts perform songs for us, we were living with and forming deep connections with them. Instead of being woken up by extremely annoying and unnecessarily loud music by my counselors, I had to wake myself up each morning. And because of this, I missed many breakfasts and morning activities. No one is saying that 3 weeks in Israel is going to solve all your problems, but it will give you a sense of independence and maturity that, for me, makes me feel less nervous about going off to college and living on my own. On a different note, my experience taught me that Israel is a place where I can be all the way across the globe and still feel connected to my community at home. While I was there, I saw Rabbi Graber, I saw my friend and past counselor Jaden Gummerman. I randomly saw one of my friends who lives up north was on a different program and just happened to be staying in the same hotel as me. I hung out with Avery, Simone, Renon, and Elliot, and while in Tel Aviv, I was spotted by longtime family friends from Massachusetts. I cannot totally encapsulate my experience in this speech, but I will say that my 3 weeks in Israel were some of the best 3 weeks of my life. For any teen who is thinking about going to Israel, either through Ramah or through Tel Yehuda if you want to have fun, or HSI, or even just on a family vacation, definitely go with an open mind, think critically while you're there, and get a buzz cut before you leave, because it is hot.
Shana Tova. My name is Simone Kornbluth, and this summer I spent 6 weeks in Israel and 1 week in Poland with Ramah Seminar. I attended summer camp at Ramah Darom for 8 summers and continued my Jewish journey with my camp friends in Israel. I didn't know what to expect when beginning, but I left feeling the most connected I ever had to my Judaism. On our first day trip out, we went to Sfat, where I had decided I would buy my first piece of jewelry in Israel, that being a Jewish star necklace. At home, I often hesitate wearing my hamsa because sometimes I find it results in judgment. But here, I could show my Judaism and was so excited to wear my new Star of David. I had entered the summer as a 16-year-old and couldn't help but think about my grandfather, who also, at 16, had fought for Israel in the Independence War in 1948. I felt a sense of pride being in the place that he and so many others had fought for. We visited historical sites that we had only heard about in stories, but standing before the ancient walls, we felt the weight of history, the echoes of prayers from the past, and the resilience of our people. It was a powerful reminder of the bond of Jews to Israel. One of my favorite experiences was exploring the shuks. Although it was slightly overwhelming, I enjoyed seeing all the cultural foods that were new to me. The food was the best there, the cooks preparing it in front of our eyes. I studied the art of bargaining and attempted, but was largely unsuccessful. My technique of walking away after they said the price often resulted in no response. Whether I got it for 20 shekels or not, it didn't really matter, because being in the shuks, I could feel immersed in the chaotic but beautiful life of an Israeli. On my trip, we spent a week in the south. While the temperatures were exhausting, it was a very unique experience to practically live in the desert. We also stayed in Kibbutz Keturah, where we were able to fully immerse ourselves in the kibbutz life. We would eat our meals in the Chadar, where the community children were walking around barefoot. Though the kibbutz life is not for me, it was really cool to learn about how people are able to continue the practice in the modern world. The days were short because of the excessive heat, and there were many pre-5 a.m. wake-ups included in this, but it was all worth it to watch the sunrise, do Shachari, and wake up with Israel. Thinking back, some of my favorite times to people watch was observing the Israeli children play on the streets. They played pick-up soccer on the stone that our ancestors put down thousands of years ago. One time in particular, our tour guide set a stop for the courtyard in front of a yeshiva. It was recess for the boys, and they were playing soccer. We had sat down right in the middle of their makeshift field, and seeing them argue for their space to our guide, but watching them move on and play with a smile, made me realize they were just children playing. Their kippot and tzitzit didn't stop them. This summer, I felt at home, surrounded by Jews and relating and feeling the holiness of the cities. Being in a country that my grandfather had helped fight for, surrounded by people that made me feel connected in a way that I had never felt. And bringing this mindset home, I'm no longer hesitant to wear my Jewish jewelry and have never been more proud to be a Jew.
Shana Tova. My name is Avery Prince. This summer, I went on a Ramah seminar with Renon, Elliot, and Simone. As we traveled through Israel, we were welcomed with open arms. I felt right at home amongst an entire country filled with other Jewish people, where restaurants are kosher, streets are quiet on Shabbat, and Hebrew is spoken across the country. Before we started our long stay in Israel, we began with a week-long journey in Poland, traveling to Warsaw, Krakow, and seeing all the history in between. While this was not an easy experience by any means, it was a meaningful one. I had learned about the Holocaust my whole life through books and stories, but going to Poland and physically experiencing these sites, while learning the history, put the stories in perspective. While these sites were filled with sadness and pain, our tour guides encouraged us to also think about the current Jewish community through the difficulty of this history. On our second day in Poland, we traveled to Tikocin, a small town that had been historically Jewish before the Holocaust. We saw the rare sign of Jewish life in Poland, a beautiful old synagogue where we prayed Shacharit and learned about the history of the town. There, we learned the idea that each person dies 3 deaths, once to their body, once when the ones who knew them in life pass away, and finally when their name is last said or remembered. We then walked to a barren grass field that we learned was the Jewish cemetery, in disarray from years without enough care. We spent the next hour cleaning the graves and reading and remembering those who were buried there. This act of remembering and telling stories continues the lives of those who have passed away, honoring their past and preserving their life. As I sat on the plane from Poland to Israel, I wondered, will I be able to connect with Israel in the way that so many of my friends and family have before me? After constantly seeing news about fighting and war with neighboring countries, I was concerned about if I would struggle to see the positives in a difficult environment. This all changed once we landed in Ben Gurion Airport, where Hebrew, Arabic, and English signs greeted me with open arms. As we walked outside into the hot and dry climate, I felt the feeling of being at home, surrounded both by friends who I've known for a decade and ones who I'd met just a week ago, but felt like family. We drove straight to the Western Wall, where we got our first real experience of Israel. I was again unsure if I could connect to such a prominent historic site and its meaning. This again all changed once I got there. I put on my Sabbath talis and wrapped tefillin and walked into the crowd. As we prayed mincha, I pressed my head against the wall, saying a private prayer. I can't quite describe how I felt in that moment, but I can tell you that I felt connected both to Judaism and to Israel. In Jerusalem, we traveled across the Old City, immersing ourselves in the history of the center of Israel. We experienced the diverse cultures of the city, spending time hearing from locals in the Muslim quarter, visiting the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and listening to a local organization that works on Israel-Palestine relations and education with local youth. We fully immersed ourselves in the city's culture, traveling to local synagogues to pray on Shabbat and learning from locals about their experience. Each story of how they arrived in Israel was different, but there was always one similarity. They felt at home, connected to the history and culture of a country that generations of people fought to live in. Though its politics and history are complex, meeting real Israelis helped me see the reality of living in a state that means home for so many people. As our time in Jerusalem ended, we were split into groups to go on Ekar, our challenge for the week. Elliot took part in Refuah, a program to work in a hospital that lasted all summer long. Renon was in Hisardut, wilderness survival, and Simone and I participated in Yam Layam, a C2C hike across Israel. It was a grueling 4-day hike in the midst of a heat wave. I learned to persevere through the climate and uncomfortable sleeping conditions. On the fourth day, we arrived at our final location, the Kinneret. As I splashed around in the water, I felt the joy of accomplishment, a finished hike and trip across Israel. I felt at home.